Now, your Wave 31 Storm Tracker forecast. Now, your Wave 31 Storm Tracker forecast.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Wave 31 Storm Tracker Chief Meteorologist Jeff Castle here. I do want to give you a little bit of an update about our winter weather situation for the coming weekend. We'll give this just a couple seconds for folks to see that we're on and to start tuning in. I do want to remind you, live streaming right now, of course, on social media, Meteorologist Jeff Castle Facebook page. We're on the Wave 31 Facebook page. We're also streaming live right now on the Wave 31 YouTube channel. You may not know that we are on YouTube when we are live and also posting content there throughout the day. We're also going to be streaming this live on our apps and our website. If not aware of that, got a standalone weather app, Wave 31 Weather. Search for it in your app store. Wave 31 News app also you can find. Those are both free to download. And of course, we have our live stream always running on our website, wavetv.com. And just a reminder, those are the places where you can always get the newest information. Keep in mind, for those of you watching on social media, if you're only scrolling through your news feed, sometimes you don't always get the current stuff. Some of the things that get posted, depending on the algorithm, may not see it until a week after it was posted. So always make sure our apps and our website are where you can go, in addition to watching our newscast to get the very newest information. But that's what I'm sharing with you this evening, the latest on what we have going on with our winter weather threat. It continues to look minor to moderate, depending on your location. Better than it looked earlier in the week when it looked like this could be a historic ice storm. So I'm glad we have not shifted back in that direction. But there's still likely going to be some impacts out there because there is going to be a period of some sleet, some freezing rain. Still doesn't look like we're going to have much, if any, snowfall out of this. Could be a little on the beginning and the back end of it. But for the most part, we're looking at ice as the predominant precip type that will be frozen out of this as opposed to snowfall. So let me pop up the latest updates here from the National Weather Service. If you remember yesterday when we had the live stream on, we were telling you about a winter storm watch. Well, that was changed first thing this morning. So the watch was updated to now include some warnings, or basically calls to action. Just a reminder, when we tell you there's a watch, that just means conditions are favorable for that type of weather to happen. And when you start getting into warnings and advisories, then those are actionable statements, which means this is kind of what we're expecting at this point in time. For you folks out in the shoals, and we've kind of talked about this the last couple days, it still looks like you may get hit the worst out of this winter storm that is coming on through. And as a result, the Weather Service has put you under an ice storm warning. That'll run from midnight Friday until 6 p.m. on Sunday. This is the area, also you see parts of southern Middle Tennessee and back into northeast Mississippi, where we expect the greatest accumulations of ice, specifically freezing rain. And that causes problems, not just travel-wise, but freezing rain, just kind of a reminder of what that is. That is rain that is falling, liquid, but surface air temperatures are at or below 32 degrees. And so when those raindrops hit any object that is in the exposed air, whether that's a car, a fence, a tree, power lines, those raindrops freeze instantly on those surfaces. And as you get enough ice accumulating on objects, that ice starts to weigh them down. And then that's when you start having some problems out there with tree limbs that are breaking, power lines perhaps that are coming down, and tree limbs falling on power lines, which then causes some disruptions and power outages. And of course, you have the concerns about hazardous travel as well, as that freezing rain accumulates, particularly on elevated road surfaces, bridges, overpasses, where you've got the cold air above and below, and typically the road surface is going to be fairly representative of what the air temperature is. And in some cases, if the air temperatures are cold enough, even roads just in contact with the ground, that road surface will start to ice up as well. So again, this is where we may have our biggest problems in terms of this winter storm coming through here in North Alabama, but not the only place. Outside of where we have that ice storm warning, there is a winter weather advisory. This is a step below a winter storm warning, but this still means frozen precipitation is expected in the form of, again, sleet, which can accumulate and cause slick and hazardous travel, and freezing rain. Again, that creates that glaze of ice on everything, including the road surfaces. And so that is something that could occur here across the rest of the area. So Athens, Decatur, Huntsville, included in the winter weather advisory. You folks up in southern Tennessee around Fayetteville, over towards Winchester, included in that. And also over into Sand Mountain, Gunnersville, Scottsboro, Fort Payne area, Marshall, Jackson, DeKalb County. You are under the winter weather advisory for some impacts coming from this storm as it moves on through. So let's kind of talk about, I'm going to run through some different things here. Since we've got time, I'm going to show you some model data. We're going to talk about impacts, going to talk about what ice totals could look like. So let me first kind of run you through the overall setup. And to do that, we're going to take a look at future radar. And I've got a look here at future radar that is going to show not only the precipitation, but the forecast air temperature. And if you've been watching the last couple days, one of the things we've been talking about and one of the trends that we were seeing in the new data that was coming in was that we were going to get a little bit of a warm up across North Alabama. Temperatures going above freezing at some point during this event. That was the trend. There were some of the computer models that we use were quick to pick up on that trend. Others were a little bit slower. Some of them still haven't completely bought into that. But more of them than not are saying that the lower atmosphere is going to warm up enough so that even though we may initially have some of this frozen precip, there's going to be a changeover to rainfall in some, if maybe not all, of the area before it's all said and done. So this is future radar. This is the latest update, and we will get, we should get another one of these coming up through the evening hours that I'll have for you tonight at 10 o'clock. But this is the most recent one that I'm going to run through for you. And we will start this, you can see just after midnight, Friday night. This is future radar at 1:30 in the morning, Friday night into early Saturday morning. We're probably still dry at this point. It does look like the timing of this, and again, depending on what piece of data you look at, the timing is maybe a little earlier, maybe a little bit later. But in general, we expect an after midnight arrival of some of this precipitation with this developing winter storm. So let me march you forward. This is, again, just after midnight. We take you to 6 o'clock in the morning, kind of in the thick of it at this point, at least at the very beginning. Now, this particular computer model is showing some snow. That's the blue color that you see there, as a possibility at the onset. You also see that pink color. That's your wintry mix. That's going to be your sleet. Probably initially, we're going to have sleet. And then as the atmosphere warms a little bit more above the surface and that warm layer gets a little bit thicker, that's likely when we're going to start to transition over to some freezing rain. And that kind of a question mark at this point. Is it going to be more sleet, more freezing rain? You know, give us a little bit of wiggle room there. But suffice to say, it is going to be a setup for ice as opposed to snow. So this is 6 o'clock in the morning. May already have some problems here starting to develop with either some sleet on the roadways or some freezing rain starting to show up. And notice the temperatures. They're below freezing. We're down into the low to mid-20s, a lot of places, slightly higher over in Sand Mountain, but still below 32 degrees over there towards Guntersville, Scottsboro, as well as Fort Payne. All right, I'm going to move this forward. We're going to go to the lunch hour on Saturday. This is 12 noon on Saturday. Future radar showing that snow has lifted northward out of the area. And we are pretty much all in the pink here across North Alabama and southern Middle Tennessee. So again, through the morning hours, continued areas and patches where we're seeing sleet and or maybe some freezing rain starting to show up at this point in time. You notice the temperatures. They remain at or below freezing for most of the area, but not all. Gadsden, for instance, lunchtime on Saturday, this particular model says it may be in the 40s there. And we're seeing indications of above freezing temperatures from Coleman to Arab to Guntersville over towards the Fort Payne area. And as we go forward in time here, you're going to see more of that, I don't want to say warm air, because by no means is it warm, but relatively speaking, and above freezing air temperatures continuing to press off to the north. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Still got the pink in a lot of locations. There are still some spots where temperatures are below 32, but we're seeing more and more areas where we're getting above freezing. And you also see an indication of that, the precip type changing. So we're going from that pink color, now we're starting to see some greens and yellows, which is indicative of where we are beginning to change over to rainfall. And that process is likely to continue in a lot of locations through the evening hours. Here's 10 o'clock in the evening on Saturday. In particular, from Huntsville to the south and west, we are sitting above 32 degrees. Now, you do notice parts of Sand Mountain at this point may still have some temperatures that are below the freezing mark. One of the other components of this setup is, and why it's so complicated, is that there's not only going to be some cold air that's already in place as this winter storm is moving in, there's also going to be some cold air that's going to be drawn in along the east side of the Appalachians. We call this a wedge of cold air. It can be a common thing here in not just the winter season, but even into the spring. It can very much bust a forecast. But some cold air being funneled down the east side of the Appalachians, and then it kind of backdoors across North Georgia and can make it into northeast and eastern Alabama. So that's kind of what this model is saying, is that, okay, we're still going to hold on to some colder air here near the Georgia border. So we might hold on to some liquid, some frozen precip in that area a little bit longer compared to the changeover to liquid in other spots. But that's not expected to remain the case. We take you into Sunday morning, here's 6 a.m. Notice the temperatures actually go up in quite a few locations. We're talking mid, maybe upper 30s by the time we hit daybreak on Sunday. I think that's a real possibility that we will either, once we get above freezing, sometime later Saturday afternoon, the places that happens, temperatures will either stay steady or may even go up a little bit more heading into Sunday morning. Again, close to the Georgia border though, hanging on to maybe some pockets of colder air. And then lastly, I'll take you towards the lunch hour. This will be noon, because that's as far out now that this model runs. When we do get the update this evening that I'll have for you tonight at 10 o'clock on the news, this should update, and it should go out until 6 p.m. on Sunday. So that's how far it'll go on the next update. And here we are, lunchtime on Sunday. Even some 40s perhaps showing up across the area. So basically the way this is playing out is it looks like we're going to start with frozen precip. Maybe a couple flakes of snow, more likely some sleet, and then eventually some freezing rain. That's going to last for part of the day Saturday. That's going to cause some problems and some impacts across the area. At some point later Saturday afternoon, we bring in this punch of warmer air. It'll start above us and then eventually work its way down to the ground, where we're going to bring the surface temperatures up above freezing, and it's going to remain above freezing for a little bit above our head. And that's going to allow this precip to be in the form of rain. Not freezing rain, not sleet, plain old rain. And then once that process happens, it's likely going to stay that way through Saturday night into Sunday morning. Now, on the backside of this system, as the winter storm pulls away, we're going to bring in some colder air on the backside. Depending on how much moisture remains, we might change some of that back over to something frozen. Maybe a little sleet, freezing rain, perhaps even a few snowflakes. But right now, that doesn't look like it's going to be real substantial. Most of the information I'm seeing says that as this winter storm pulls away and the colder air starts to wrap back in, the atmosphere is going to dry pretty rapidly. All right, so let's talk about impacts, and we'll talk totals. And I'll show you some model data. This is my forecast, kind of my thinking. You know, I can show you model data all day long, and I will. I'll show you some of that. But it is my job as a meteorologist to use the models as a tool, to not just show you the model numbers and say, okay, that's what's going to happen. It's my job as a meteorologist and a scientist to look at everything available to me based on what I see and what I think will happen and what my experience tells me will happen, kind of come up with my own forecast. So this is it. So this is ice accumulation. This is primarily what I think will be in the form of freezing rain. Now again, there could be some sleet that could accumulate as well. It's a little less certain how much of that could accumulate. So this ice accumulation graphic, this is simply talking about how much freezing rain, how much of that glaze of ice we could be talking about. And for the areas in the light pink, I think up to 15/100ths of an inch is possible. And then outside of that, the totals are a little bit higher. You go out towards the shoals, Russellville, Florence, Muscle Shoals, Tuscumbia, Cherokee. 1/4 of an inch, maybe more in spots. Notice that also wraps around through Fayetteville, through Huntland, Winchester, Tennessee, and also holds on there close to the Georgia border, parts of Jackson and DeKalb County. So there will be some higher ice totals, I believe, in those areas. And then you head into parts of southern Middle Tennessee, Pulaski, Lawrenceburg, back towards Waynesboro. We're talking maybe 1/2 inch of ice or more. All right, so what does that mean? We can tell you the numbers, but what exactly does that mean in terms of impact? So I think this is a very good graphic to show you what that means. When you're talking around 1/10 of an inch, that's your glaze of ice. You get some icy bridges. Power outages, probably unlikely. That much of a glaze of ice usually doesn't produce enough weight on anything to cause any major problems. You start getting up around 1/4 of an inch of ice. That's when you start having moderate impacts. And again, that's kind of what we're anticipating out towards the shoals near the Georgia border and portions of southern Tennessee. Icy roads become a little bit more common, and some power outages could start to become a concern. You start getting up around 3/10 of an inch, 1/2 inch of ice. That's when you really start to have problems, particularly with power outages, with downed trees and broken power lines. So once you get up to 1/2 inch, that's when you really start to have some issues. So with that in mind, and I very much agree with this graphic, this one kind of illustrates what the winter storm impacts are likely to be like. This will take maybe a second for everything to load up, I hope. Bear with me, there you go. So this is for this weekend, and this is where the impacts are expected to be highest. And you do see parts of Mississippi, not good out there. I mean, they're at the high end. They're at the extreme range. This is where we could have some very, very significant ice accumulations. But again, what's helping us here in North Alabama, that expected changeover to some rainfall that's going to help eat away at potential ice totals as it stands right now. But you do see where those impacts are highest. Again, the shoals, northwest Alabama, where we have the the ice storm warning in effect. So yes, you folks, Colbert, Lauderdale, Franklin County, there's a good chance that you may have some bigger impacts out there. Some power outages, certainly some hazardous travel. You head east of there towards Athens, Decatur, Huntsville, minor impacts. I think there will still be some hazardous roadways that we'll have to keep an eye on. And then you also see southern Tennessee, higher impacts up in that direction. And also you see some of those brighter colors over towards the Georgia border and parts of Jackson and DeKalb County. So again, these are all areas that we're going to have to keep an eye on for some higher impacts. But some impact is a possibility in many locations here across North Alabama. Just not going to be widespread, high impact sort of situation for us. So just kind of taking a look at some of those here. The travel impacts, some slick roads, yes, expect that, particularly where we have the ice storm warning. Power outages possible, yes, especially northwest Alabama, and again, maybe close to that Georgia border. And we're all going to follow this up by very, very cold temperatures. By Monday morning, we're going to see lows down, way down into the teens, and wind chills that could be in the single digits to near zero. I'm really thinking that the Weather Service is probably going to put out a cold weather advisory. That's kind of a new product for them. That we used to have wind chill warnings and watches and things like that, but they've kind of consolidated all of that into cold weather alerts. And there's probably going to be one of those that's going to be issued for our area just because of what we are expecting heading into Monday morning with temperatures that cold. All right, so again, that's kind of the setup. That's my thinking. That's how much ice I think we're going to get out of this before it's all said and done, and what I'm expecting that the impacts are going to be. So let's just share some model data with you. Let's see here. This is going to be the European model. I have preference for this one. I feel it's kind of the gold standard of weather models, particularly looking out in the mid-range, 3 to 5 days out. Usually does a pretty good job. So this is what it is saying in terms of ice. Again, this would be primarily freezing rain, how much could fall. And you do see kind of a minimum there. I-65 corridor, not a whole lot around Huntsville. Athens, Decatur, generally 15/100ths of an inch or less. You see where the purple colors are. Those are the higher totals that we have with this across parts of northwest Alabama, portions of Sand Mountain, again, especially near the Georgia border, and areas of southern middle Tennessee. So my forecast kind of leans towards what the European says. But obviously, if we were seeing bad agreement in the data, I might have to consider some others. This is another computer model. This is the American model, also known as the GFS. You may have heard about it before. You know, if the European model is the gold standard, the GFS is, we'll say, the silver. So it's not quite as good. I mean, sometimes it may perform better, but my experience, most of the time, the European outperforms. That's just my experience. This one's still holding on to a little bit more significant icing across the area. You do see, though, around Coleman County, that decreased area of ice. So this model has been gradually trending towards a warmer solution. It hasn't gone all in yet. And that's why this is painting more ice across the area. But again, I think what the European is saying is a little bit more realistic. And I mentioned this yesterday, that sometimes looking at all the different model data, I mean, literally my head wants to explode. But let's run you through some other stuff here, and I'll show you why I've kind of come to the conclusion that I have. Just because you sometimes look and you see, well, what's the general consensus? And you kind of lean in that direction. So this is another model here. This is our in-house model that you won't be able to find on the internet anywhere. This is put together by our weather vendor. It is painting, again, a picture very similar to the European. Lower ice totals around the I-65 corridor. And then on either side, there are higher numbers out towards the shoals, in Sand Mountain as you get closer to the Georgia border, and up into southern middle Tennessee. So again, we're seeing a more of a consensus that this is kind of how it's all going to play out. So that's kind of why I've leaned the forecast in that direction. So I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell. This isn't going to be, for some of you, this may end up being significant. And again, shoals, Sand Mountain near the Georgia border, perhaps, if we can get that colder air, that cold air damming effect to really push into northeast Alabama and again southern middle Tennessee. So these are the areas where we're going to have some more significant problems. And probably lesser of an issue around Huntsville, and Decatur, Athens, down to Coleman. Doesn't mean we won't have any issues. And I certainly encourage you through the weekend, and I know a lot of you have prepared for this, prepared to be inside, stay inside. If we do get that changed over to some rainfall, okay, yeah, heading into Saturday evening, even early Sunday morning, there may be an opportunity where we get improvement. Because what's going to happen when we change over to rain? I don't say if, because I really believe that we are going to change over to rain. So any place where we would have any icy conditions on the road, temperatures above freezing, rain falling down. The raindrops, of course, are going to be above freezing with their temperature. Any ice that may have accumulated earlier in the day on Saturdays is going to go away. There will be some improvement. The other thing we're going to have to watch on the backside of all of this, and let's talk a little bit about that. I know I'm showing you the ice numbers, but I also want to show you we're going to get some good rain out of this. So when we get the rain coming in, it could be moderate to heavy at times. This is, again, the European, what it is saying, and this is pretty common across most of the data. So through Sunday evening, we're probably going to get maybe a good 1 to 2 inches of total precipitation. This is total. Some of this is going to be that ice, but a lot of this is just going to be plain old rain that comes on in. So there's going to be a lot of water that's left over. And the only other thing that I'll be concerned about out of this, after the precip has ended and we start to get colder, Sunday evening, Sunday night into Monday morning. My only other concern is because we're expecting that there's going to be some decent rain out of this when the atmosphere warms above freezing, is that we're going to have some water that's still left on a lot of roadways. Temperatures later Sunday into Sunday night are going to drop rather steeply. And there is a reasonably good chance that if there is still moisture on the roads, not just we'll say a damp road, but still some water sitting on roadways, that it's going to freeze up into black ice. So I think that could be a problem for generating some more hazardous travel conditions on the back end of the system after it's gone away, and that would continue Sunday night into Monday morning. So again, a lot of moving parts, a lot of things we're looking at. I don't think this is going to be a historic high-end ice storm for us, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to have some impacts nonetheless. All right, so that's kind of my spiel, and I can go on and on sometimes. So let me just take a look here at what we've got with the live. Just to see the questions. So McKinley, I think I answered your question about out towards the shoals travel. Not recommended until we may get a changeover to just some plain old rainfall. But obviously, if you don't have to be traveling, I just don't think it's in your best interest. Stay home, wait it out. I know a lot of you have already planned for that. Let me check here. There's a lot of people checking in and watching, so definitely appreciate that. So yeah, so I mean that's pretty much all I got for you. You know, these things are tricky. I mean, I'll be honest. It's not an easy thing to forecast winter precip in the South. It's rarely clear cut because we're always on that line between frozen precip and liquid. And this is another prime example of that right here in Alabama. We are on that line where it looks like we are going to warm the atmosphere. If for some reason that doesn't happen, then that completely changes the outcome out of this. But we are fairly confident that this is how things are going to play out. All right, well, with that in mind, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here this evening. I hope I've answered some questions. Any of you that are concerned, hope I've eased your mind a little bit. For those of you that, can be maybe a little critical because the forecast doesn't always go the way that we think it does, hope you have a little bit better of an understanding as to why that is, because there's a lot involved in this, particularly when it comes to winter weather. The good news is that what we do have tool-wise as we get closer to an event, we get a little bit more confident about how it's going to play out. So the way it looked earlier in the week looked one way, but as we got closer, we started to see these trends, and that's what you look for, really. Sometimes forecasting using these computer models is you're not strictly looking at, okay, what does this one run of the model say? You're looking at the trend. Which way has it been trending? And how long is that trend going to continue until it reaches some sort of stability? So, and that's what we've been monitoring the last few days, and that's how we've gotten to this point. Obviously, things can still change on a dime. You know that if you've lived here long enough. So I encourage you to check back with us. Again, I will get some new information here in, what time is it? 8 o'clock? Between now and 10 o'clock. There'll be a little bit more new information trickling on in that I'll be taking a look at and adding it, digesting it, seeing what that means, if it means we need to make any changes to the forecast. So have that for you at 10 o'clock. Again, continue to check in with us here, social media, but just realize sometimes what's on your news feed is not the most current information. But you can always get that watching us. Heading to our website, waytv.com/weather is the weather section there. Way 31 Storm Tracker weather app. Of course, the news app will have information about any road closures, things like that may happen impact-wise this weekend. And I just encourage you to stay weather aware and just know that we're going to be here, we're going to be watching it, and we're going to be providing you updates as we take you through the weekend. Hope you all have a great rest of your Thursday evening. I will see you back here tonight at 10 o'clock. Hope you have a safe evening, everyone.